Welcome to the Built for Growth podcast, where I talk to Dr. Peter Martoni, who is an educator, injury prevention specialist, and patient care health practitioner who has been focused on improving patients' biomechanics for over 25 years. And we talk about sleep, but from a structural standpoint. And a lot of sleep experts that I've heard talk about sleep hygiene and less blue light at night and waking up with the sun, but I haven't heard anyone really talk about the way that you position yourself for sleep and its effects on the nervous system, digestion, and so much more. He also mentions why people tend to fall asleep in less vulnerable positions, like us side sleepers, and how our subconscious mind factors in and what we can do about all of it to create healthier sleeping habits that benefit our brains, bodies, and nervous systems. As always, thanks for listening. Well, Dr. Martoni, thanks for being here today. And I don't know if you knew this, but a few years ago was my very first biohacking conference. And I was just attending, trying to learn things. And I happened to sit in on your talk. And I remember getting my phone out kind of sporadically because I was like, I have to record this. This is so good. And I was thinking of my parents and my family because I was like, I have to send this to them. They need to hear what this man is saying. I've never in my life, I've heard a lot of people talk about sleep hygiene and habits, less blue light before bed and waking up with the sun and circadian rhythm and sleep hygiene. And I think all of those things are really important. But I've never had someone break down the body mechanics and the structure of the body and the spine in the way that you did. So I've been a huge fan of your work.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, ever since that moment. And I remember you laying on the floor and everything. I mean, you were really, you were really passionate about your work. And so I've had you on my list of guests for a while. So I'm just glad that you can be here. And I want to talk to you about sleep.
Thank you so much, and that means so much to me that from years ago you still remember what I say, because sometimes you don't know, if people are listening, but apparently you're listening, and that warms my heart. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with that then, the structure of the body and why it's important to sleep in a certain position over any other.
So when I first started, I wasn't in the sleep industry. I started in the structural, so I'm a chiropractor. And in chiropractic school and through working with patients, I came up with anchors. What controls everything in the human body? Well, it's the brain. Through what system? The nervous system. And the spine protects the central nervous system. So how important is it that the spine maintains its shape, right? Maintains its integrity to the function of the central nervous system. And it's critically important. So when you look in the sleep industry now, like you said, they're great. There's great advice, right? Don't use red light, shut your phones off. But these are all generic Google. You can Google these things. But when you really look at the frame of the body, it is being destroyed at night when people sleep.
Hey, just checking in and seeing if you've had a chance to go to mishatate.com and subscribe to my newsletter. The reason why I'm asking you to do this is because I would love to be able to connect with you. As a certified behavior change coach, I love helping you reach your goals. And I go beyond just goal setting. I love health, fitness, nutrition, and performance. And for example, this week's newsletter has a fun perk about making your own pre and probiotic drink at home naturally. It's inexpensive, you don't have to buy a supplement, and it's super easy to do. And best of all, it's delicious. I know because I have a 4 and a 6-year-old that drink it like it's going out of style. And the science behind probiotics and your immune system and what it does to boost it is pretty solid. So I think that this is a great precursor to help you and your family not get sick. And although this is anecdotal, me and my family have not been sick this season. We've been around so many people with colds and flus and going back to school and the weather change. A lot of people around us have gotten sick, but somehow we have managed not to. And although it's probably more than just this delicious fruit water drink, I think this is something that's really moved the needle for us, and I'm excited to share that with you. And every 2 weeks, you'll get a newsletter from me, so I promise not to bombard your inbox, but I will share the best things and tips and traits and all of that good stuff with you because I want you to be successful and I don't want it to have to cost you $1 million. As a matter of fact, it's entirely free. So go to MishaTate.com, sign up, and I look forward to connecting with you.
Right, because they're not looking at the structure of the spine as a vertical. They're looking at airway. They're looking at, they look at, okay, when you close your eyes, you open your eyes 8 hours later. What is the best, what's the best road to be able to allow somebody to do that? And all of these other things go into it. And when you really understand that the structure is super important, and that one of the major reasons people toss and turn 20 to 40 times a night is because their body is in pain, and nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, and in pain or uncomfortable, right? I mean, after a while, you just I'm still struggling to not be as much of a side sleeper, but I will tell you, since I have the neck nest, I sleep way more on my back. I usually always start every night on my back, and sometimes then I just realize I'm on my side. I don't know what to do about it. I try not to, but I'm like, oh. But I do, my hips, my lower back, when I side sleep, even though I find it like a very comfortable position to fall asleep, I definitely feel in my lower back, and especially if I'm on a hard surface. So like if we're in our RV and I'm sleeping, that little bed that's above the driver's seats, there's not much padding there. I'm like, my hips will kill me, absolutely kill me.
Well, you said something, I'm so glad you said this. You said, oh yeah, when I sleep on my side, I feel comfortable. Okay, so let's dissect that a little bit, because this is everybody. When you use the word comfort consciously, it's what your conscious brain mistakes for comfort is actually safety for the subconscious brain. So here, let me explain. So we came up with this thing called the triune of sleep, where you have three things at play when you're trying to sleep. You have the body. All the body wants is alignment. It doesn't want to be in pain. It wants alignment. And it wants its weight distributed over the greatest surface area. That's what the body wants. And then you have the subconscious brain. The subconscious brain wants to feel safe. That's all it wants, right? So I remember growing up in Malden, Massachusetts, on a busy street, and every once in a while, kids would play a prank and they'd come up and they'd smash on the window. This is at 5 years old. I was petrified to go to bed. And my parents would always say, go to bed. Well, the only way I could go to sleep was to put stuffed animals all around me, create a cocoon, put a pillow over my head, and that's how I felt safe. And that's the only way I was able to fall asleep. So we translate that into our adulthood. What you believe is comfortable because you're curled up in a ball, that is not comfortable for the body. That feels safe for the subconscious brain. And then so you have the body, then the subconscious brain wants to feel safe, and then the conscious brain, we just need to learn, we need to just shut that thing off. That's where all the, I can't breathe, I can't do that, no way. The conscious brain what screws everything up.
Isn't that the truth?
and so when you start to break down sleep into those, think about the body first, then create safety for the subconscious brain, and then teach the conscious brain how to get out of its own way, then you start to be able to get what we call way better sleep, awakening the full potential of a well-rested, aligned you.
Okay, so explain to me, so if I'm sleeping on my side, maybe my subconscious is saying, oh, this is a familiar, safe place, this is where we want to fall asleep. But why would that be bad structurally for my body, and what would be better?
Yeah, so when you're on your side, think about pressure points, okay? Your body weight is jamming your shoulder into the bed, right? You're going to end up having a love-hate relationship with your neck, with your pillow, because your neck's going to get jacked up. And the average person tosses and turns 20 to 40 times a night because you're in pain. The way that I explain this is fall asleep in the position that you think is comfortable. The position that you think is comfortable, most people are on their side, right? Try to watch a 2-hour movie like that. It's not possible because you're going to be in so much discomfort, your body is going to move. So if you put yourself in that side sleeping position where the spine is contorted and there's pressure on the shoulder and the shoulder's internally rotated, most people that are side sleepers are going to have a hip issue, a neck issue, and or a shoulder issue because your tissue remolds at night when you're sleeping. So your bed and your pillows are mold for your neck and your shoulders. So if you want those issues, just side sleep. And then you're going to have those because you're going to get internal rotation of your shoulders, your hips are always going to be twisted, and you're going to fight it for your entire life. And you're never going to be able to get at the root cause because it's the way that you're sleeping. And you're spending a third of your life like that.
Have you ever had anybody think about this from a vanity standpoint? Because since your talk, I thought about that and I said, this actually would probably create less deep wrinkles. Because, when you side sleep and you squish your, and this crease line gets deeper and then the neck. I was looking at you actually, you barely have any neck, deep or the crease in the chest or whatnot. When people kind of fold over on their side, they get that deep chest and in the neck lines and these things, because when you lay on your back, everything's just, nothing's pressing on that. Can I not lie, that's part of my motivation to sleep on my back.
Listen, and you laugh, but that's a major motivation I didn't realize until I created what's called the neck nest, and people were sleeping, they're like,
you look younger.
It's unbelievable.
Sometimes when I've side slept, I wake up and I'm like, damn it. And this crease line right here is
when you side sleep like that, think about putting your face against, a pillow, right? Well, what's going to happen? You're going to cave in your sinuses. You're going to end up with breathing issues. You're going to end up with sinus issues because your bones remold based on the stresses applied.
Okay, so we move on to the back, which is, because what about stomach sleeping? And then tell me about the back.
So back sleeping is the best.
Okay.
You want to, in how you position the pillow is critically important, because you can't just sleep on your back and put a pillow underneath your head. Anytime you support something in the body, you weaken it. Anytime. I don't care what the support is. The definition is support removes stress. And when you remove stress, the body's going to atrophy. So if you get a pillow, you want a pillow under your neck, and you want the weight of your head off of the back, not supported. Because you want to use the weight of your head to gently distract a curve into your neck. And then that ultimately is what's going to reestablish the cervical curve. And due to the righting reflex, body posture adjusts to head position. So when you establish a good cervical curve in your neck, all the rotation in the hips get pulled out because it's following neck position.
Rotation in the hips, explain that. So what happens when people don't have good neck posture?
So we have thousands and thousands of x-rays where when you lose so a cervical curve in your neck should go this way, the thoracic curve should go this way, and the lower back should go this. So it's like an S.
Okay.
And that shape acts as a spring. That's a shock absorbers. When you do damage to your neck due to side sleeping or damage from sports, you lose the curve in the cervical spine, and it flattens out. That causes dural tension all the way down to the lower back and the sacrum. There's a ligament that attaches from the base of the skull all the way back to the sacrum. So what ends up happening, as that head comes forward, the body doesn't like that tension, so it twists the pelvis to take pressure off in the scoliotic plane. So when you look at people, they're like this. So when your head goes this way, the hips go this way, right? And it's a counterbalance, because everything is righting, the righting reflex. Everything is adjusting to the leveling of your head.
Okay, so
and your eyes.
So this pillow that you designed, is it to sort of mimic the natural curve that you should have with good posture when you're like standing or when you're, in a position of movement? Or is it trying to like overcorrect, or what's the design behind the pillow?
So what the neck nest does is it puts the neck into extension, right back, opens up the airway, Because when you sleep on your back, you don't want the airway closed down. You want the airway opened up. And then we have ways that we can manage the airway when we do that. But it puts the head into extension, and it allows the weight of the head to hang off of the back. It is such a natural, comfortable position. Once you get it right, it's a game changer. But here's the thing. When you fall asleep, are you consciously in control?
No.
So we need to talk to the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. So the only lifestyle habit, if anybody wants to make a change, is to fall asleep in this position. That's it. You don't have to stay in this position all night. If you wake up, just do whatever's natural. Fall asleep in this position for 45 minutes to an hour a night. That's it. And then you can go to your side and you can do what you want. Because if you can put that neck into extension for at least 45 minutes to an hour a night, that's the baby steps into transforming your sleep.
And when you do that, what do you see with your patients in the spine? And like, is there actually change? Because I know you've said that the spine is moldable, which is not something I've ever really thought about. You know, you think of bones as fixed, but your spine does. It's obviously it's not like a bone like in your arm or something, right? I mean, it's got all these different discs.
If I take your arm, right, and I take it and I bend it, and I hold it like this for a year, guess what would happen to the bone?
It would probably be bent.
It would bend. Right? You can bend it.
Makes me think of those Chinese women that would like wrap their feet or like way long traditionally, or the long neck,
the long neck, right?
What is that? I don't know what kind of cultural thing that is, but they put those rings around the neck since they're little girls, and they make their necks very, very long.
You can stretch anything in the body as long as the body's pliable. It's not like rubber, right? It's hard and bone. But the ligaments are tissues. You can stretch those tissues. And the best way to stretch is light stretching over a long period of time. And think about it. I can fall asleep with a glass of water on my chest, and it will still be on my chest when I wake up. I don't toss and turn because my body's in this corrective sleeping position. And I'm able to get 8 hours of correction from being on a computer all day long, from texting, from this forward head posture. We see 10-year-olds in my office with phase 1 degeneration because they're on their phones too much and they're sleeping in these contorted positions. So it's critical to at least start out the night on your back, not just for sleep, but for overall injury prevention during the day because it aligns the structure.
Do you make smaller versions of these pillows for kids?
So we don't. They are customizable to be able to take fill out of them for the kids.
Okay, because it's so funny. Just last night I was thinking about this and my son and the way he sleeps, my daughter and the way she sleeps, and I won't let my daughter fall asleep on her stomach. I'm like, you can't do that, because she has this thing right now. She has all these stuffies, these plushies and stuffies, and her bed is just like it's like 100 plushies in her bed. But she likes to hold on to them and fall asleep kind of like this, and like her
Tell
back.
Me why.
She probably wants to feel safe.
Right.
Yeah, it's comforting.
This is exactly what I did with my daughter. Same thing. It was so hard to get her from our bed to her bed.
It's a safety thing.
It's a safety thing. So what did I do? I went into her room and I gave every stuffed animal a superpower. I said, the turtle, it's like lead. Nothing can penetrate it. Turtle goes on her head, right? Because you can create pressure here, or they can go onto the bed. So you can create the same thing in this position if we look at this neurologically, right? So I put a turtle over her eyes. And then we have the lions on the end of her bed. Anybody comes in the room, the lions are going to attack. And then we gave every stuffed animal a superpower. So what did that do for her level of safety in her room? It's the safest place in the house.
Yeah. And so what did you notice about her sleep?
Gone. She slept in her bed ever since we did that.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. And so my son last night, he's 4 years old, and he has this pillow, and it's a thin pillow, but it's an adult-sized pillow. And I hate the way that it closes the airway when they lay on their back, and it kind of pushes the chin.
It's better for a child to have no pillow if that's the
That's
case.
what I was going to say. So I kind of like moved that, and I got one of his blankets, and I kind of rolled it up,
there you go.
and I just was like, hey, why don't you lay on this and just see if it's comfortable? Because I think for me, one of my favorite things about the neck nest is that it can kind of like squish up still kind of by your ears. So I feel like I can still kind of just have a feeling of pressure, like resting my head against something. And I think that would be my biggest struggle that I'm not used to. And it probably is a comfort thing now that you say that. Like it feels like home when I have things to lean against or something to like have counter pressure against me. And so I like the feeling of having something by my head to like at least tilt my head onto.
So let's do this now. Let's take a totally different approach to sleep, and let's get down to a neurological level of what we're actually doing, okay? So this is what's never been talked about before. Sleep is a dance between two systems, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. These are the two nervous systems that control fight or flight, right? Survive versus thrive, okay? So when we are awake, we are surviving, basically, right? Heart rate, respiratory rate, anxiety, stress, hate, fear. These are all sympathetic dominant states, okay? So parasympathetic is love, safety, protection, right? In our culture and where we are, people tend to live this very sympathetic dominant life.
Yes.
And then when you lose the structure of your curve, you suppress this like stepping on a garden hose, because you compress the vagus nerve at the base of the brainstem. So even though you may be in love, in health, and you're still going to have issues in the three areas that the parasympathetic nervous system affects: immune system, digestive system, and hormonal imbalance. So these are thrive systems, and these are survive systems. At night, we're supposed to do this.
Swap the
systems. And because this is such a weak, suppressed muscle, and it's being affected by misalignment, we never turn it on completely. So if you're thinking and you live in fear, you're always going to have sleep issues, right? Because sleep is a dance between the sympathetics and the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we teach our children how to sleep, it's not like, get to bed, go to bed now, and they're living in fear. We need love, in nurturing, give them space, protection, and that is where true health is. So sleep is a place where we're supposed to plug in. And most people are only plugging in their iPhone 50%, and they're only getting 50% function that day. You're a high performer. Anybody out there that wants ultimate performance out of their body needs to look at sleep where I'm waking up 100% charged. I'm shutting down my sympathetics, turning on my, like a superpower station, like the Elon Musk,
Right.
car. It's like a superpower charger, right? To doing this. And then when you sleep, you're like this, and you're ready for the day.
I think that's really powerful. I think you really hit home with the needing to feel safe and those systems, how they're supposed to switch and what we do in order to feel safe. But maybe if we take a deeper dive into that, you could feel safe on your back, right?
You can. So being on your back is an exposed position, right? Well, what is the difference in being on your stomach? It's pressure. So when you're on your back, depending on what sleep avatar you are, did we talk about the sleep avatar?
No, tell me the sleep avatars.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
is
this with the triune? Is that what you were saying earlier?
Yeah, so we have the body, the subconscious brain, and then the conscious brain. At drsleepright.com, we created this quiz that you take, and it identifies what animal you are. You're either a gorilla, an armadillo, or an ostrich, right? The gorilla, it basically what I'm doing is where identifying how much safety you need to create and how you need to create it for your subconscious brain. So the test is testing your subconscious. So what you do is you start with the body in alignment. You take your animal sleep avatar. Are you a gorilla? Gorilla, you can fall asleep anywhere. You have no predators. You can be on your back.
On the airplane, passed out, catching flies.
They're the ones drooling. They don't care. They can fall asleep anywhere. Then you have your armadillos, right? Which I would think, with cross dominance, we like to feel safety and protected. So you're probably more like an armadillo, where you want pressure to feel safe. And then the ostrich is so timid, they need to stick their head in the ground to feel safe, right? So you need to create a different level of safety for the ostriches. So how do you go from being a side sleeper, protected, or a stomach sleeper, to this? Pressure on your chest, pressure on your forehead. Why the neck nest works so well for you is when you fall asleep, your conscious brain's out of the picture. All your subconscious brain cares about is pressure. So when you sleep on your side, it likes the pressure against the side of your face. So the neck nest is creating that pressure on both sides, holding you into that cocoon.
Yeah, that's the only reason why I can fall asleep on my back, because I have to have something to tilt my head against. And even sometimes I need pillows to kind of lean my legs against. Or, I have to be able to have something to lean against. But that's funny that you said pressure, because when I was on Celebrity Big Brother 3, it was like 6 weeks of complete isolation with these people in a house, and it was total human experiment. I look back on it and I was like, I don't think I would ever do that again, because it was wild. And my children were pretty small at the time, but you don't know what's going on in the outside world. But anyways, long story short, sleeping in that house is very different than sleeping in my own house. And so I had a weighted blanket there, and I fell in love with it. I was like, I've never used a weighted blanket in my life. I'm a pretty good sleeper. I don't really have any issues with sleeping. I usually have pretty good 85 or plus Oura Ring scores. So I sleep well, but that pressure, that safety, and also what dogs, like if they're like flying, they have anxiety, right? They have created like pressure vests. So there really has to be something about. There's another point. When we're grappling and wrestling, there's a language at least that's spoken. There's understanding of pressure. So I think I'm a very pressure sensitive person, because when I read pressure against my body in any way, it's information for me. Whether it is a situation that I'm moving through in wrestling or grappling, I'm reading a language of pressure. Or when I'm trying to sleep and relax, I'm also trying to read if that pressure is conducive to like a safe place for me to feel comfortable to fall asleep.
So when you think about a baby, right? When a baby's crying,
swaddle them.
Right? What does that do?
Gives pressure.
And then ultimately it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system. So fear, safety. Pressure creates safety.
It's like being embraced, right?
It's embraced, it's love, hugs, right? It's pressure. It's that connection. When you use pressure, you're releasing parasympathetic stimulation. So we did this experiment with hundreds of patients and people within our network, where we analyzed people's heart rate variability and we established a normal. And all I wanted them to do was to wear a sleep mask. And it pressure against their eyes improved their heart rate variability. Only a sleep mask by up to 20% just using a sleep mask. What did that do?
Do you think it was the pressure, or do you think it was the fact that there was no light?
No, it's the pressure.
Okay.
Because people were sleeping in room darkening shades, but it's the pressure against the eyes.
That's so interesting. See, and that's something that I don't like about sleep masks, is I don't like that much pressure on my eyeballs. Yeah. But I don't know. So interesting. But you're right, though, because
you can use it on your forehead too.
Okay.
So I don't use them. Sometimes I use a sleep mask, but I put a pillow right over my forehead every single night, right on my forehead. I like the pressure on my forehead.
That would make sense, I think.
And then I put a pillow or covers underneath my chin to hold my mouth shut. I just like that
combination.
feeling of.
I think I would like that combination as well because, like I said, I'm pressure sensitive. So there's certain pressures that I really like, but I'm also sensitive to it. I don't want things pressing on my eyes, so that's why I don't wear a sleep mask. I like the room to just be dark, but I bet you I would like pressure.
You would.
On my forehead.
It's so
Yeah,
comforting.
I like framing otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I had another question for you then. So if the spine, we're not working with our spine alignment when we sleep and we're working against it, do you happen to see people, or do you think that translates down to like knee problems?
Oh, it's all the way down. I can look at somebody now, and I know. So here we go. Your body posture is a blueprint of your neurology's battle with gravity. So when I look at people, I know what their brain function is doing based on how they stand. So anytime I'm working with somebody's knees or I'm working with their feet, I always work with it's a balance issue. They're leaning too far forward. They're constricted in the forward plane because they're not. They actually kind of goes along with having ADD too, because you have a specific portion of your brain called your vermis that's atrophied, and as we lose our balance, we lean forward. And we lean forward into that constricted plane, start to get anxiety in the brain, but it all stems from the head and the neck. The knee issues are only imbalances within the proprioception starting from the brain.
Wow, you just blew my mind.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to take that all in right now.
So here's the thing. So we have this new invention that we're working on. I really can't really talk about, but basically what it's doing is it's analyzing people's balance, and we are extrapolating cognitive functioning from that. So what happens is as people age, they lose their cognitive decline, right? Mm-hmm. Kids in school, they're more anxious. Adults, they get more and more anxiety. Well, we're linking that to loss of balance because of inactivity and atrophy in a specific portion of your brain.
That has to be anxiety provoking.
It is. Oh,
I think when we don't move our bodies, not only do we get a buildup of energy that our body doesn't know what to do with it, which I believe would translate into anxiety itself, but also as we get weaker, it doesn't feel good. You don't feel confident moving around. Mm-hmm. I've had injuries, for example. I mean, I've always been pretty athletic and always moved around, but when I've had injuries that have prohibited my movement, I'm way more anxious because I don't know if I'm going to fall. It's hard to get up and, in and out of certain positions or things that I'm doing, a leg injury, an arm injury, whatever that may be. Just having that sudden prohibitment in my movement.
Restriction.
Yeah, that restriction in my movement is extremely anxiety provoking, and it's almost all that I can focus on at that moment in time. So I imagine, though, the slow decline in that, sometimes people aren't even realizing that this is happening because that's a slow, steady decline.
Yeah, so the specific portion of your brain is called your vermis. Vermis controls proprioception. Proprioception is your awareness in space. The brain health is from movement. In the vermis, the big thing about the vermis, which really is tied into the anxiety, is it builds the prefrontal cortex, which is your executive functioning, which is where your anxiety lives. So as you lose proprioceptive signals into the brain, hence you get scar tissue, injuries, lack of movement, you're weakening the vermis, weakening the prefrontal cortex, causing anxiety. So somebody like us, who's cross-dominant, right-handed, left-eyed, left-footed, we require a lot of spin for our brain to stay focused. That spin is from proprioception and movement. So when we don't have that movement, or it's restricted from loss of cervical curve because of your sleeping position, as we continue to get older and older and older, and that loss of curve gets worse and worse and worse, you're decreasing proprioceptive signals into the brain, and your anxiety is getting worse and worse and worse every day as we age because of loss of cervical range of motion in the spine.
So how do you see this changing the way that people are aging by sleeping on their back? I mean, you've been doing this you've been in this industry, what, 25?
25 years.
25 years. But when did you start working with people on adjusting that sleeping on their back, and what have you
15
noticed?
years ago.
Okay, so I mean, you've been maybe working with some people for quite a long time. Have you noticed anything that's
Significant differences. So when you look at sleeping in sleeping position, and you look at changing the structure of the cervical curve, you're doing that. I'm not in the sleep industry to help people sleep. I was in the sleep industry to help people fix their structure while they slept so the neurology worked more efficiently. So we have people getting rid of brain fog, digestion issues, hormonal imbalances, anything tied into low parasympathetic tone, immune system dysfunction, digestive dysfunction, and hormonal imbalances, like what everybody has a problem with. Okay. If you have a digestion issue, you have an immune system issue. You have an immune system issue, you have a hormonal issue. They're all connected to low parasympathetic tone because of this loss of structure in the neck interfering with 80% of the parasympathetic inhibition.
Do you think that before we had comfy beds to sleep on or whatnot, do you think way back in the day that we used to sleep on our backs primarily, or are there other animal studies, things that you've noticed, I guess, that might point to?
So I love that you bring that up, because there's a big animal study that's done that makes everybody say that side sleeping. Your doctor recommends side sleeping, on your left side most specifically. When you look at the data and you really look at these studies, which I've looked at most of them, you have to understand these studies, and any study you have, if it's scientific in nature, Newtonian physics, not quantum, by the way, that's like a way different model. They're looking at one vertical, and they're ignoring everything else. And what you choose to ignore could be way more important than what you're looking at. So the 2015 study that says that lymphatic drainage, your brain drains, and then they link that to Alzheimer's, happens better on your side. Well, let's look at that study. That study was done on rats. And the rat cervical spine is completely opposite the human cervical spine. And in that study, there's a significant statement. And that's what it says, significant statement. It says, this study was performed on rodents. We are extrapolating that the same goes for humans, even though there are no human studies.
Okay, but in what way is it completely different? What do you mean by that?
So
the spine.
When you look at the spine in the human spine, one curve goes this way, yeah. The other goes this way. The top curve in the human goes this way, in the rat goes the opposite way.
Okay.
So let's say you're sleeping on your back, right? Your curve is this way, okay? The rat curve is this way, right. So it needs to sleep on its side.
Yes, makes sense. Yeah, dogs would never sleep on their like
no,
their
because
back.
So then I started looking into other animals like gorillas and lying on their back to sleep. And when you look at it, the animals sleep in the position that they distribute their weight over the greatest surface area. So dog's on its side, yeah. Right? And cat's on its side. So you look at these animals and how they sleep. They're sleeping not counter. My dog can sleep on a hard floor. Think about us sleeping on a hard floor on our side. Yeah. We'd end up with shoulder impingement. We'd have all sorts of problems.
For us, because that's a tiny space to distribute weight, right?
This is the most, but this is unsafe. So because our conscious brain really screws us up.
Well, it's not exactly unsafe. It's vulnerable.
Good, that's
vulnerable,
great. Yeah,
because
vulnerable.
I think if you're in a safe environment and if you could address that and kind of have some good self-talk maybe before you go to sleep, at least start your night, like you said. Yeah. Okay, but so when we look at primates, it'd probably be like the closest example. Mm-hmm. Like I would think in my mind, I haven't looked at these studies, but that gorillas or maybe monkeys, they would probably sleep propped up against something, kind of like sitting up. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, so you see them in depicted in different. They sleep on their stomach. Some of them sleep on their backs.
Yeah.
I'm not. I really am not a gorilla expert.
Yeah.
But when you look at the pictures of them sleeping, they're on their back. They're propped up in these positions. But really, what I think the important takeaway, especially for when you're looking at positioning, there's something in the body that's called closed packed positions, where your joints are the least, where they're the most stable, right? So the arms are here, right? You don't want to sleep with your arm up here because it's able to be injured in those positions. So you want your joints in neutral positions when you sleep. So when you're in these positions, you're affecting vascular flow in your arms, in your shoulders, in your hips. If you can imagine the body in alignment, things just flow better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. I wonder how long it takes people, probably depends what kind of avatar they are, huh? To be able to feel comfortable or safe making that adjustment to sleeping in a more vulnerable position.
Yeah, so there are different ways to be able to handle this, right? You can sleep slightly elevated, right? That takes a little bit of pressure. The biggest thing is the older an individual is, the longer it's going to take, because a lot of times, picture the spine is like clay. An older individual is harder clay.
Yeah.
Young individual, it's more moldable. So it's easier for a younger person to align the spine and get into this position if they can create that pressure correctly. An older person, a lot of times they'll get some back pain, they'll get hip pain. But remember, the only thing you need to do is start like that. And that's the habit. Because then over a period of time, 1 hour will turn into 2 hours. 30 minutes will turn into an hour and a half, right? And then the longer people do this consistently, then it becomes a game changer.
Well, I'm proud of myself because I do that most
And I'm
nights.
proud of you too. I
you.
see you. I
didn't know
what
that,
you say.
but some years now, I've definitely been working on this. So, no, tell me about, you said hormones, digestion, and what was the other thing?
Immune system.
Immune system. So can we dive a little bit more into that as far as
Sure.
why that would be affected by the structure of your spine?
Yeah, absolutely. So the nervous system controls everything in the human body, going back to that. And the specific nervous system there's 3 nervous systems in the body. There's something that's called sensory nerves. Those represent 10% of the nervous system. That's where you feel pain and you feel. Mm-hmm. There's motor nerves. A motor nerve goes to a muscle, right? Muscle movement or protection. And then you have autonomic nerves. So muscles are 45% of the nervous system, motor nerves. And then the other 45% of the nervous system are the autonomic nerves. Those are the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So when you look at the sympathetic nervous system, it's all the way along the spine. The parasympathetic nervous system only comes from 2 areas. Right here at the base, at the top of the neck, and then at the bottom of the spine. Only those 2 areas. So it's very vulnerable for misalignment. So a misalignment in the cervical spine directly affects the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system controls immune system, digestive system, and reproductive system. So sympathetics are, survival.
Yeah.
Your thrive systems are your parasympathetic. So picture this. Your grandmother always said, don't eat a sandwich and go swimming. Why? Because you're eating a sandwich, which is parasympathetic, and you're going swimming and you're staying above water. That's survival. So you end up, you can't, run from a tiger and have sex behind a tree. Those
right.
are
two opposite things.
2 opposite things, right? You're either surviving
Right.
or you're thriving. A cell can't be in survival and thrive at the same time. You can't survive and thrive.
Right. So, yeah, I think I want to dive a little bit deeper on that. I totally understand what you're saying, but this is so fascinating to me. So,
And repair happens down in
in this
parasympathetic.
Yeah, in the parasympathetic. And if we are not physically, structurally aligned in that, then our parasympathetic nervous system takes a hit. Is that because the communication is disrupted? Like, why
It
would
is.
that be?
It's so there's some good research Dr. Ron Hauser has been doing in Florida, and it's due to it's all about forward head posture. So when you have forward head posture, you affect what's called the carotid sheath. There are 3 nerves in there. The vagus nerve, which is the vagus nerve is 80% of all of the parasympathetic supply of the entire body. There's the glossal pharyngeal nerve, and then the spinal accessory nerve.
I'm going to need you to write these down.
Yeah. So tight traps, difficulty swallowing, right? And
Yep.
then your entire
No, I know exactly what you're talking about because I'll see people sometimes and they walk around and
Yeah.
it's like they look like I almost want to go like push their turtleneck back in, because
it's so bad. It's so bad, right?
Yeah.
And you look at people and you be like, oh, that's a digestion issue. Oh, they have heart palpitations. Oh, look, that's autonomic, dystonia. I mean, you can, and then when somebody comes in, we need to start looking at sleep as a nervous system problem. It's all it is this. It's love, gratitude, prayer. It's like where are you most connected versus most disconnected? Fear, hate, judgment. These are two. When you look at emotions, you look at the current state that we're in. It's no coincidence that everybody has a sleeping problem because everybody's stressed out of their minds. So if we can look at this as, okay, all right, I agree, then there's got to be something within these 2 nervous systems that nobody's addressed before. All right. Well, how does the structure affect those nervous systems? Because the spine is one of its major roles, movement, stabilization, and protection of the central nervous system. So looking at the structure of the spine in its relationship to how it affects the nervous system, that's what I've done for 25 years. I have taken people from their deathbeds and brought them back to normal functioning working day life. Chronic fatigue, irritable bowel. Somebody I'm working with right now, they have sensitivities to everything. Rashes all over their spine, all over their back, going away because we're addressing the balance between the 2. You can only live like this for so long, right? And when you start to bring balance, then repair, in the roads like this, but when you truly are able to get plasticity within that nervous system by getting healing at night by the way they sleep, getting the spine adjusted, getting movement within the spine, doing functional movements, working out, getting the body moving, teaching love, gratitude, and stuff like that, you're able to transform the world.
You have a synergistic effect right there when you get all of those things aligned, right? And you said something about recovery, and that made me, I want to ask you about injury prevention, injury recovery. I know you've talked about that a little bit, but tell me.
As an exercise physiologist and a kinesiologist, that's my jam, right? Because I've broken this. I had a seat break under my mountain bike and go through my leg. I broke this. I need recovery. Like I can't deal with downtime, right? Especially for my ADD. Can't do it. Can't deal with downtime. So when does the body heal? Heals in deep sleep. When does the mind heal? It heals in REM sleep, right? So deep sleep is body healing. REM is so you don't go crazy. It's categorizing all of your dreams and stuff like that.
Memories and everything, yeah.
So I am, and then understanding, in order to heal, you need to have your parasympathetic nervous system turned on to its max. And to do that, certain vitals need to occur when you sleep. First, number 1, your heart rate needs to drop. 2, respiratory rate needs to drop. And 3, very important for healing, is your body core temperature needs to drop. And all of these need to occur before midnight. right? So and that's what happens during time changes. Because when you time change, midnight's a natural energy spike. So you want to be in bed before midnight and be in deep sleep before that energy spike. So I give a rule of thumb to my clients. Every hour before midnight is worth 2 hours of sleep after midnight.
Oh.
And so when we have a time change and it shifts that, it throws everybody off. So 3 weeks after a time change, people get sick.
Well, there's some crazy statistics about heart attacks and things like that going through the roof
And
when people lose 1 hour of sleep.
All it's doing, they're run so tight, it's a ticking time bomb. And it only takes that little bit of sympathetic dominant stress and a little bit of healing, and that's what triggers it.
Yeah, that's crazy. So how many hours before midnight are you in bed?
I'm not a good example. So,
So you're as do as I say, not as I do kind of person?
so I'm in bed about 9:30.
Okay, that's good.
9:30, 9:45.
Yeah.
So I'm sleeping
That's
by.
not bad. That's normal,
Yeah, no,
right?
no, that's not normal. Normal's midnight.
Oh, okay. Well, yes,
Yeah.
I guess you're right. Normal is a loose term. I feel like that's normal for me.
Yeah, okay,
I'm like
me
a
too.
night 9:30,
Yeah.
sometimes 8:30 if it's a great night. Like
Yeah.
that's my version of a party now. you
Yeah,
know?
that's
It's like
perfect.
my kids
Wow.
are asleep
I stayed up
8:30.
till
Oh
late.
my
Woo.
god. Yeah, I went to sleep early. I love prioritizing my sleep. I absolutely. I'm not a coffee drinker. I don't drink coffee, and I think it's because I sleep really, really well. I mean, that's part of the reason why. But I'm always looking for those little innovative things that can improve the quality of sleep. There's always room for improvement, right?
Absolutely.
And you're right about the deep sleep and how that's affected. My Aura Ring tracks all of that for me. I'm going to sound like I have an Aura Ring sponsorship. I don't. But just honestly, the information that I get from that, sometimes when I eat a big meal late, my heart rate will not drop.
No, because your digestion and your heat stays high.
Yeah, early enough in the night, and my Aura Ring will kind of tell me the next day, hey, your
And
heart
working
rate,
out too late.
right, your heart rate dropped too late. And I always found that's really interesting information. But also when it comes to healing and recovery for people who are in sport or just want to age more slowly, I would say, human growth hormone is like really only released in deep sleep, I believe it is.
Deep sleep, yeah.
Right, and so you're right about that, like getting that up in the front part and getting to sleep on time and feeling in a place where you are safe. I feel like that's so important because different hormones are released by by our body expression or by our thought. If we're thinking about something really stressful before we go to sleep, right? Then we get into a position where we're trying to alleviate some of that stress, but maybe we're not actually like speaking with our body. I think it works both ways. I think our body language speaks internally to us and we speak to our body, and they kind of go hand in hand. That's why we have facial expressions. My facial expressions aren't for me, they're for you, right? To kind of know what I'm saying or how I'm feeling about what I'm saying. But I think that's so interesting as humans, right? How we communicate in these different ways, and what you're saying about the healing process and getting into that sleep sooner, but also structurally, and just the hormones that are released and everything, like it all goes hand in hand.
It all goes hand in hand. And I think another really good thing is, and a lot of people have documented this, which is great, is breath is really important, like your breath. And we've just recently come up with this concept of sleep breathing. And then this is just kind of looking into the nervous system and what controls what. You fall asleep on your exhale and holds, not your inhale. So, for instance, sleep breathing would be you take an inhale, right? And then you take an exhale slow. And then at the end, there's a natural pause.
Yeah.
That natural pause is all parasympathetic.
Okay.
You fall asleep in that pause. And then you take an inhale and let it out again. And focus on that pause. Just focus on just letting go. In that pause is where your racing heart you'll feel, and then it'll start to slow. Then you'll take it in, then you'll let it out.
Yeah.
You hear the clock.
Yeah.
See how things just calm down in that pause?
It does.
And when you're inhaling, you can't hear that clock. But when you exhale
And then you pause.
and you pause,
You can hear
it's
it.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's interesting. You bring up that pause because I remembered before ever knowing what you just said, wanting to kind of spend more time in that pause sometimes. Like sometimes I've just on an exhale and I'm just like, I just almost wish I didn't have to breathe in again because this is so peaceful right here.
And that's where peace is. So you hear about box breathing, right? They do this when you're awake, not when you're sleeping. Because when you hold your breath in, it's unnatural to hold it, right? I just want to just let it go. But when you come up and then you let it go, it's natural to hang out there.
Yeah, for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're getting good oxygen, right?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So with the breathing part of it, I think that's something that's really good and actionable for people to try to do. I know anecdotally for me, it is one of the best ways I can put myself to sleep is to focus on my breath. And what I do, I kind of think of it as like a type of meditation. But if I'm ever having one of those nights where I've just been so busy all day and I just feel like there's a lot to unpack before I go to sleep, I will lay there and I will take a big breath in and I'll breathe out slowly and I'll literally focus on relaxing every muscle from head to toe and releasing any tension that I'm storing in my body. Because as your mind races, your body tenses. You know, people, you watch a movie and you watch a scary movie, or you're watching fights. You ever watch fights and all of a sudden you realize your body, you're like, oh, wait, I'm like, wait, I'm really tense right now. You know, but that's because the brain is taking in this information that's really stimulating, right? And it's like, ooh, this is action, I'm nervous, whatever that is. And so then it translates physically. I feel like the same thing happens when we go to sleep. And the opposite of that is to sleep, we have to relax, right?
Correct.
Yes, and that's exactly what you've been saying. But I've kind of connected those dots. And so for me, a lot of times it's that meditation through breath work. And I'll start with like the top of my head, my forehead, as I'm exhaling, my facial muscles, my ears, my chin, and I'll go down with every breath and kind of go through the body, and then I'll start at the top, because by the time I've got to the bottom, then I'm like holding tension again on my face on accident.
Oh my God.
But because you can't stop your mind from working, but it's kind of like, which one do you put in front of the other, the chicken or the egg? But I think it doesn't really matter as much as long as you're making the connection so that your body's one way or the other communicating through its nervous system, through your actionable things we can do, breath work, through relaxing the muscles, through getting in a position that we're like accepting some vulnerability, because sleep is about being vulnerable. You cannot sleep if you're not willing to be vulnerable.
That is a great point. And another thing that you mentioned, and I don't want you to gloss over this, or maybe I can add to this, is we like to be in control, right? And the problem is sleep is the opposite of that. So you're focusing on your breath, going from head to toe, in a way that's controlling something. You're controlling your thoughts. Mm-hmm. Well, you can either be in control of one of two things: thinking or remembering. You can't think yourself to sleep because the blood's in the prefrontal is in your awake brain, but you can remember yourself to sleep. So if you remember a memory in the past that you had to, for some reason, you had to have already slept on it, right? So something that happened yesterday or the day before, and you want to focus on controlling something, remembering that memory, and you'll fall asleep. And once you put yourself to sleep on a memory once, your body will go to sleep easier on that same memory. So put yourself to sleep on the same memory over and over and over again.
So, and it's something like a positive memory, like, do you have an example?
Okay.
Can you share a memory for you? Because there's, like, my son, for example, was like, Mama, at Halloween, trick-or-treating, and these things and holidays, sometimes there's just things that scare kids, right? So it's a trick-or-treating experience.
That would be a bad memory.
and he's focusing on this memory of like something scary, and I was like, so then I try to shift him to like a more positive memory and get him thinking about like, well, remember that one time when we went, or what's your favorite thing about this, or who do you want to go and visit next? And I just try to get him to offset the stressful memory, but give an example of a memory.
Okay, so I joined a golf course this year, and I walked a golf course. One swing, walk, sand traps over here, up there, over there, next swing over there, okay, there. Let's go to the next hole. walk through the course, go there, where was the shot, next shot, next shot. So I walked the course, an 18-hole course in my head, and I'm out by like hole 5.
Oh, I love that.
And because that's a rhythmic, non-stressful thing, right? So you, whether, I don't know, you may not want to remember a fight, you know?
Right.
You know, but maybe like a bike ride, you know, down a path, or, you know, something. You know, something that you felt good doing.
Sometimes I try to do daily recaps. I do that with my kids too, actually, where we'll kind of recap the day. And usually by the end of that, they're pretty checked out. Or I'll try to remember the things that were important to me that day. That was like, I guess that could.
But to put yourself to sleep, it needs to be a
the
memory
same one.
in the past.
Okay.
You had to have slept on it.
Gotcha.
So maybe go remember something you did yesterday or 2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. That puts things more in the memory bank anyways, which is these days I'm like, I get hit in the head for a living, you know. Meet the same person 2 or 3 times. They're like, we've met. Don't you remember? I'm like, no, but
So after
this could be helpful for that too.
After my last Christmas party last year, or whenever it was, I counted everybody that came to my party. Counted everybody, every single night. 115 people. Categorized them. I had lake friends. I had, you know, friends over here. Those guys came over here. They stayed up there. I put them in the areas of my house that they were standing. Like it's that type of rhythmic thinking, and you do that over and over and over. I put myself to sleep on that for months.
Well, that reminds me, when I was probably, I don't know, a teenager or whatnot, I used to lay in bed and think about everybody that I wanted to pray for. And I would just like be like, okay, I want to send a prayer for this person. And nothing specific, a prayer, but just like a prayer of well-being. And I would just list all the people in my head that I could think of.
Gone, you'll be out.
Yeah. Oh,
Out.
yeah. It's better than counting sheep.
Yeah, there you go. Counting prayer people. That's fantastic.
I love it. Oh, this has been a great conversation. And although I've sat in and listened to a lot, I feel like I still learned so much from you today. So thank you for being here. And is there anything that people should know, or how can they follow you? What do you got going on?
Yeah, they can take their animal sleep avatar test at Dr. Sleepright, DrSleepright.com. And then
And that's free, right?
Yeah, free.
Don't cost nothing.
Yeah, give
Love
away.
it.
Yeah, and then if they're ever interested in looking for a pillow that serves a different purpose, they could go to necknest.com and take 10, and they can.
There we go. Yes,
yeah,
we get a little
10. Why
promo
not,
code
right?
going in there. Why not? That's easy.
It's easy.
Yeah, like instead of take 10, take 10.
Take
there
10.
we go.
I like
it.
that. I
Yeah.
just came up with it.
Perfect. All right,
Perfect.
let's roll with it.
All right.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you, and it won't be too long, I'm sure, before we're in contact again. So everybody, there's Dr. Martoni. Thanks.
Thank you.